Hello. For many years before this, I really wanted to develop tech skills. And so now I had a chance. But I also realized that I've been really missing the presence of people and human energy. I really find that there is an urgency in a person's presence and human presence. So it usually pushes me to do things around that urgency. So what my students urged me to do, just by being there on the screen with me, is to attend to their social emotional well-being. So we did a lot of check-ins. We spent some time that completely devoted to coping with COVID. A specific session. We also had a session where we shared insights into how we're coping and what to do, supported each other. I've also challenged myself to change how I share authority. So my students, because me being always in front of the screen, it's too much to handle, and I'm not really a custodian of knowledge like that. So I really wanted to share authority with my students. So we had reflection groups where my students would start a conversation every session. A particular reflection group would start a conversation. Also, each reflection group was a peer supporting group, right? So the students were supporting each other. I also was very glad to have Zoom as a chance to connect with colleagues around organizing on campus. But for me, that organizing also was challenging because, again, I said that human urgency is really important when you're present next to somebody. Their energy is pushing you to do things, right? So Zoom was really useful in planning, right? We were almost always accessible, almost always available unless we're teaching. But it was not so useful in creating that emotional push that helps me move needle on different kinds of actions. I frequently found myself being apathetic. Sometimes I caught myself saying, well, I could do it another day, or, that distance that was allowed between us also got a little bit into me. And I thought that maybe, I could do something another day, and at another point, even though the action might have been urgent. So in other words, for me, Zoom is useful, but it was not really and cannot be a replacement for that presence of another human being, their passion, right? I also noticed that I started to use self-evaluations. I mean, I used them before, but they were particularly useful in the space where you don't get to meet students, in person as much as you would in a pedagogical space that is not distant like that. So students wrote about what they learned, things that I could not have seen, how they grew. And so about that, from that, I also learned about who they are. And I also learned a lot about who they are from just reading their reflections, not possible when you teach a big class to know what's in everybody's soul and in their mind and their heart. But it's so much easier to see it, of course, when you read and every week you respond. So my approach has been, I've been doing both synchronous and asynchronous Zoom, but the asynchronous is when I particularly got to know my students much, much deeper. So thank you for this opportunity, Natalie.